Hello, this is Adrian Shepard. Just wanted to make a quick video. I've been feeling a little sick the past couple weeks, so I hope that doesn't come off too much in my speaking. But I think it was worth covering something roughly in relation to the Israel-Palestine question, although I think this also has implications. For example, Taiwan's dispute with China, in Ukraine's dispute with Russia / war with Russia. Any number of these conflicts where there is a demand to intervene from mainstream politicians. Now, libertarians are well known as opponents of an interventionist foreign policy. This goes all the way back to the old right of the 1940s and 50s, goes back to Murray Rothbard's position, Ron Paul's position. The Libertarian Party has always had a non-interventionist manifesto from 1972 all through the Cold War, and continues to this day to advocate for a humble American foreign policy strictly protecting American territory and lives. But not every libertarian or self-identified libertarian has held to this position. There are a number of people over the decades who have had an alternative view. For the purposes of this discussion, I will refer to them as Libterventionists. And I want to address their arguments and some rebuttals I would have to them, because with the rise in global instability, the increase in interstate wars over the past couple years, I think it's worth addressing these people who think the solution to this is not only a interventionist America / West, but that this is totally consistent with libertarian principles. So there's a number of different schools of thought in the Libterventionist milieu. The biggest school is probably the one began by Ayn Rand and her Objectivists. You see Yaron Brook this week lambasting libertarians for being anti-life and evil and rejecting individualism and civilization by saying Palestine is good. Without going into the weeds of Palestinian nationalism, we've covered that in an earlier, actually two videos in the past. Let's just think about the arguments that the Objectivists make and whether they have any merit. So one of the biggest examples is the idea that Israel represents individualism, the West, civilization, private property rights, the kind of things that libertarians would support. And then Gaza, and more generally the Palestinians, and maybe even more generally Arabs and Muslims, reject these things, reject private property rights, the rule of law, civil liberties, etc., etc. And so we must support Israel if we support all these policies and ideas. The problem with this, though, is that when a country goes to war, any country, America, Israel, Ukraine, it's very easy to see that the things we love about these countries, civil liberties, property rights, a capitalist economy, all these things go out the window, are decayed, are destroyed by going to war. And there's the bad things about Israel are specifically the ones that are done in the name of their national security, quote unquote. The conscription of young men to fight and die in their wars, the legal discrimination, the lack of civil protections for Arab citizens and non-citizens, the fact that there are, quote, non-citizens with very little legal rights within the 1967 borders of Israel. All these things are anti-libertarian, and this situation is not unique at all to Israel. America has the same thing happen. Every Western country, every war it has, as they say, the first casualty of war is truth. The second casualty of war is liberty. An interesting paradox used by Ayn Rand and her acolytes is that the Palestinians are collectively collectivist, and the Israelis are collectively individualist. And this is another reason to support them. I don't think it takes a lot to, with proper examination, realize this is a very strange way to talk about these sorts of things. I mean, surely if one believes in methodological individualism, the idea that you can group two races into which is more or less collectivist as a rule seems very bizarre and even undermines the whole point of individualism. Nevertheless, this seems to have some sort of cachet among people who call themselves libertarians, but also want to bomb Gaza. So we have the Objectivists and their positions. We have more mainstream people who belong to the Cato Institute, for example, people who belong to the classical liberal caucus of the Libertarian Party, although I will say not all of these members of either organization have these views. But in the run-up to the Iraq War, people who wrote for Cato defended the idea that we had to go after Saddam Hussein and build a democracy there on the basis of, well, liberal democracy is worth trying to spread. I mean, liberal democracy increased civil liberties. Saddam Hussein does not respect civil liberties. He's a mass murderer. Really, what we're doing is a self-defense of sorts, a third-party self-defense of the people of Iraq. This argument is very popular now in defending Ukraine, and people have started to pick up the same lines to defend Israel against Gaza. That really what these interventions amount to is self-defense, pure and simple. The problem is that because libertarianism is based on property rights, and property rights extend to the individual and individuals who voluntarily associate with each other, there is no such thing as collective rights to self-defense. And the idea that Israel or America in 2002 was going to be involved in a purely defensive act of self-defense in the same way that a man might stop a burglar from terrorizing a young lady, that America was standing up for the rights of the Iraqi citizens. But on the individual level, third-party self-defense is not valid when you, in quote-unquote defending someone, violate someone else's rights. For example, if I stole a car and my justification was, oh, I needed it to stop a burglary, first of all, that would not hold up in court. I would certainly have to give back the car and probably some restitution, if not something even more drastic. But states, by their very nature, when they engage in this quote-unquote self-defense of other people or their citizens, they engage in gross violations, mass theft through taxation, conscription, death slavery, inflation, fraud, theft, murder, the collateral damage in the Iraq War of 2003, in all the operations Israel conducts in Gaza. Civilians die by the truckload, the ice cream truckload. Libterventionists might try to use the kind of argument that, oh, well, if a burglar robs a store and someone defending the store and the store owner fires a weapon and it accidentally hits a child, it's actually the robber's fault. But that's, again, on an individual level. It does not extend to dropping a 1,000-pound bomb because you want to kill people inside it and it just happens to A, land in the wrong place, or B, land in the right place, but there happen to be civilians, this is still murder. You do not have the right to kill people who aren't involved in something bad just because you want to kill people who are involved in something bad, something aggressive. I wanted to make this a quick video, so I'll wrap up here. I just some parting thoughts about Libterventionism. I think, while this is certainly not a new phenomenon, I'm glad that it has remained a fringe phenomenon among the American libertarian movement. It is a threat to liberty because war is a threat to liberty, and these ideas, I think, are deeply flawed. I hope I've done something to kind of weaken these arguments. Certainly there are better advocates for this kind of thing than myself. Scott Horton, the members of the Libertarian Institute, antiwar.com. All these people do great work in exposing these kinds of people when they go off the beaten path. They make up basically what are arguments for mass murder under a different name. So be sure to check those people out if you find that you need more comprehensive, better arguments, more historical facts to back up your arguments. But with that, I think I'll wish you all well. Keep up the good fight against war, and may 1,000 flowers bloom.